Oh, hello. Is this your first crypto cycle? Oof, you are going to love it. Right. Firstly, then, here's a nugget of wisdom from me to you, free of charge. Crypto could go to all time highs this cycle. It could also go to all time lows and pretty much anything in between. So be prepared for all those scenarios and act accordingly. Did that help you guys out? Do you feel like you're now better prepared with that understanding of the risks and potential market movements within crypto during this next cycle? Do you feel armed to go out there and make the most of it? Probably not, right? I'm telling you something you probably already know. So, with that being said, how am I going to bring you the most value? Perhaps in giving you an idea of what I expect during this cycle. Maybe with that kind of worthwhile opinion, you're going to weigh it up against your own opinion and against anyone else you're listening to, amalgamate all that information and draw your own consensus and conclusions. Maybe? All right. So, with that being said, here is a little look at the market right now and what I expect through my lens. I will start by firstly outlining the sheer difference in institutional money versus retail money. Some folks seem to be in disagreement or aren't yet convinced in seeing this cycle as a super cycle. Now, whether that's simply because you've just been through the last couple of cycles and listened to folks prematurely shouting about past cycles being a lot different or stating that they thought those cycles were in themselves going to be super cycles. Just like now, where you hear some folks claiming that we're in altcoin season, forcing that bullish narrative that is simply too premature, at least for those of us who are not positioning in any meaningful way into the meme coin market, a market that historically has a relatively short lived lifespan, dictated heavily by more of that immediate narrative and immediate sentiment. All it takes in those situations is for an influencer with a half decent following to pump it real quick before selling out on your heads. That's a different landscape. And despite technically being accurate, I don't really count those as altcoins. They aren't really what we focus on in my community anyway. I'll let you seek out those avenues through other means, and that's totally fine. Lottery tickets are part of the fun, and I totally get it too. But for me, for my portfolio, my private group, we're not building our portfolio around rolling the dice in those ways just purely because I see too much value coming into the crypto space right now for us to waste any of that dry powder on those lottery tickets. And selfishly, come the end of the bull cycle, I want a nice big fat use case scenario of a ton of people who have made a lot of money with me. I don't think we're going to do that to anywhere near the same extent if we're carving off pieces of our portfolio to roll the dice on. Just me, each to their own. Who knows? Maybe as we go into this cycle and things start looking really, really juicy, we may shave a little bit off to roll the dice here or there. Let's just see how it goes. But right now, that's not where we're focused. So when I say super cycle, I want to be clear what I mean by that. And that is simply a lot more money entering the market than cycles past. Enough additional value entering that will potentially combat any and all diminished return scenarios or patterns that we identified in cycles past. Most crypto traders and holders aren't used to institutional volumes. And so expectations are set on fundamentals, in my opinion, that are changing quite dramatically. The effect cannot be understated. And I really do think that a lot of people are going to be left high and dry and surprised by what this shift entails. Now, you've heard me state many times that when market conditions change as we go forward, we will, of course, see narratives and sentiment change and evolve to keep pace in a much more rich crypto landscape. Market caps hit and hold those new bars. And so price appreciation and what is deemed to be bullish or unrealistic will change when it's accepted that those volumes we should be hypothesizing with are a lot larger than they were before. Do you think this isn't going to happen? Do you think that this isn't going to be the case with so many macro catalysts at play? ETF emergence opening the largest floodgates there are to open in the financial world alone is an absolute game changer to this effect. Now, we've talked about all those other macro developments that pour gasoline on this fire. And so I'm not going to be redundant and say them again in this video. But suffice to say, I want to give you the context that the volume and market cap bar is raising and will continue to raise expectations as we need and are forced to align in a more general sense as those markets start to look larger and larger and a lot more juicy. Now, let's talk about the Richard Hart ecosystem. Now, we saw the launch of Pulsechain and PulseX. Many sacrificed and were expecting some blow off stats at launch to enjoy, myself included. Expectations at the time were very high for the launch and for the preceding weeks and months to follow. And to cut a long story short, we were underwhelmed to say the least. Now, was this disappointing? Of course it was. Did it change anything in the grand scheme of things? I don't think it did, no. The intention, even after the possibility of some huge immediate price movement to the positive, was never to sell before the market conditions changed to a much more bullish summer period. It would have given us some more warm, fuzzy feelings walking around with stacked wallets and a positive mindset. The last 2 years would have been far less stressful and more euphoric in nature, even during a bear market. But aside from those who would have been shaken out anyway, for those looking to realize the true potential of the token and the ecosystem and compare apples to apples with other layer ones or other dexes that successfully launched in years past, we always intended to hold until those greener market pastures came upon us. So as this bear market progressed and we saw more and more videos being released in the ecosystem on the tokens that's really scraping the barrel for content and delving down deep into the minute micro market and token happenings, folks started to feel less bullish, realigning their expectations due to a natural ecosystem mentality shift brought on by the sheer fact that we really didn't have too much to talk about aside from wait for the bull market and prices will be much better. Of course this happened. It's kind of expected. We shook out a lot of the folks who didn't zoom out, who weren't able to align their timeframes accordingly. This always happens. This isn't new. It's how we make money, by understanding the time periods required and staying in our positions that in hindsight are going to seem to be incredibly cheap and incredibly early. This is why I have taken that time to look at other new projects in my community and my private group, to take positions in areas that have seen some major development and had stuff to talk about. Some of those projects have already seen a 3 to 6x from when we got in. I don't care what anyone says. Private groups and networks are the best investment that you can make. I am in many myself. I've been in many over the years. This is the first time I've had my own, and I'm hoping and expecting some fantastic case studies, as I mentioned, at the end of this cycle, where those in my group then look to take those hard-earned gains and put them to work in the real world. My group extends out of purely crypto and looks to build net worth in other areas too, soon to be simultaneously being very cognizant of everyone needing every extra penny they have, every piece of dry powder. I'm putting that into crypto right now because it's currently the best wealth building asset at this moment, certainly for rapid returns. But that's not the only way we build wealth. And in my private group, we will be breaking into other sectors with creative funding opportunities unavailable to most. This is all to say that not only should we be looking also outside of certain key portfolio positions that we have at a time like this, when we have so many technological developments coming to fruition and synergizing very, very well, there are a lot more opportunities out there, and you would be silly to put your blinkers on. But I digress. So again, all of this to summarize much of the narrative over the past 2 years, especially, of course, SEC played a role, and not really a surprise. We could see Richard Hart himself positioning for that possibility, even as the Sackwatch launched with the whole no expectations narrative. A narrative, as a side note, I think that many did and still do misinterpret to mean that they should have no expectations of returns. Surprisingly, why would you invest? Don't just parrot statements, folks, without understanding the true intention behind them. Anyway, again, I digress. But there is a reason Richard Hart hasn't been active in his streams. It isn't because he lost the motivation or is planning to run away and never be seen. It's because it would have been wasted energy. That energy is best put to work in a more bullish period of time. He knows this. And we are seeing this now with his recent pickup in communication. This will increase, and we will start to see more of him as sentiment keeps pace. And before we know it, it's euphoria stage again, with new amount of X's being reported on streams, getting everyone excited. He's not an idiot. He knows what this entails. He knows it would have been just shouting into an echo chamber when market conditions weren't optimum. Now, we're also seeing more and more projects being built within the ecosystem. This is a good thing. And I'm going to be dropping, I'm not going to be necessarily dropping my own value into most of these projects. And by that, I mean taking positions in them, because I've been around too many times. A lot of them sound fishy to me. And quite honestly, I've seen too many projects being built on the back of trendy ecosystems and rugged. And it makes me cautious, for better or worse. And it probably should make you cautious too. So make sure you're doing all your due diligence. But some will prevail and do good things. I'm a firm believer in a network effect playing one of the largest roles in adoption and therefore price performance. And so when we see influencers in the space talking about other projects, whether I deem them to be crappy meme plays or other fundamentally sound ecosystems, I value it for the potential network effect that it's going to bring. There is no, how do I say this? There is no new adoption in an echo chamber where we perpetuate a bubble of communication. We see this all too much. It just doesn't happen. It requires the permeation of new ecosystems and projects and large communities to ingratiate and harness and bring them organically, converting them to other valuable projects like the Richard Hart ecosystem stuff. This is just how that network effects takes place. It's very dangerous to live in a world where we don't allow for that, or we're not open to that, because we're limiting price appreciation. To cut a long story short, it's great to have diehard folks in our ecosystem with no time for other projects. They're needed, and they help keep the checks and balances in place and form a solid bedrock of flag waving in any successful community. It's like the political landscape in the US. You have the gun nuts making sure that every American has the right to bear arms. Then you have the full-on pacifists wanting no guns, and they want to blame all the school shootings on gun laws. Whether you agree with either side is by the by for the most part, but there's somewhat of a balance formed that helps maintain citizen rights while also not going too far down any of the deep end or the rabbit holes that are, at risk from us going down. Without getting too political here, it's not about the guns for the most part. It's about many other derivative scenarios that may or may not play out. It's the same in any group of people, any community. We need the diehard maxis, but we also need the folks out there making entrances to other projects and widening our catchment zone. That's just simply how those network effects take hold. There's no getting around it. Network is everything. So where does this leave us right now in regard to the ecosystem? Well, firstly, Pulsechain, PulseX, HEX, the core components of this ecosystem are not meme coins, meaning they aren't going to move according to that rapid, fast narrative to the same capacity as some of the meme coins we've been seeing, which means we have to use our common sense. We look at past patterns, zoom out, get a sense of what a likely actual altcoin season is going to look like. Then we marry all of that with the fact that we're in a period of time where mass money is entering crypto. And so the knock-on effects this could have to cycle length and dynamic is still to be figured out. When we figure out what our time frame of expectations should look like, seems obvious, right? It is. But I still see many folks living day to day in this arena and allowing themselves to get caught up in micro expressions of premature thoughts being expressed, surprisingly often by people who should know better. But I guess we don't know their own motivations. And so I hope that they have good reasons that help themselves by calling for premature market conditions. Otherwise, the detrimental effect of false narrative and negative sentiment in mind outweighs anything else that could be gained. Imagine if we were now in altcoin season. This is the fruits of the last 2 to 3 years right now. No major future upside to look forward to. No point buying. No point taking new positions. New folks coming into the ecosystem and taking positions don't really have anything new and exciting to look forward to in terms of price appreciation. That is extremely depressing, right? And most importantly, it's incorrect. We're nowhere near that time. To suggest otherwise is to strip all bullish narrative from our ecosystem and just assume that this is it. And in reality, anyone who's been around the block a few times in crypto knows that this is not the case. Don't fall for it. Don't get hyped up in those false narratives. There's really no need. There is plenty to look forward to. I'm not going to give in this video a price prediction because, quite frankly, we should still be reading the landscape to form them. All I will say is that I can't see anything but a hugely profitable time ahead for anyone in this ecosystem. As context, I see HEX reaching past its previous all-time high as a starter. The money coming into the market is simply too big, and the unique selling points of the project and the ecosystem too great to not attract a mass audience larger than the last cycle and with more investable volume. My expectations haven't realigned by the nattering during the bear cycle. Why would they? DeFi is going to be another huge narrative this cycle, even more so than the last time, coupled with other narratives we talk about, like Deepin, that synergizes so nicely. We see a convergence of huge tech developments intersecting in beautiful ways at present. The market hasn't even warmed up yet. And if you think otherwise, well, I really significantly think and hope that you are wrong. If you want to find out more about some of the projects that we're getting into throughout the new areas of development that I mentioned, and that we see some truly huge potential in, feel free to join the private group. The link's below. There is more opportunity to leverage right now than ever before. So we're making sure that we're casting a wide enough lens to encapsulate a lot of that while also being vetted enough to make sure that the plays we're making are best in class, let's say. But now, for everyone in Richard Hart projects, I'm wondering what you should be doing. I can only give you my 2 cents. So take this as you will. But I think we are in a very dominant position in terms of potential, in terms of market share, and in terms of volume of future investment. But please do understand, if you are sitting on a bag of $1,000 value, you need to be adding to that. Yes, you'll probably see decent returns, but it's not going to change your life. You owe yourself to get a part-time job and DCA into your bags. Yeah, you are still early, especially for PulseX. I mean, damn, you are under sack price. You know how amazing that is for you right now? I actually can't think of a better token to be buying right now in order to reap big this cycle and even cycles following. If you are setting your expectations for a 3 to 5x because you haven't seen big moves yet, it's just my opinion, but I think you are selling yourself short. You are in likely the best cycle you will ever be presented with in a soon-to-be fast depreciating asset class, with institutions coming in to make waves and cut those potential cycles to follow, to cut that potential, to bring in new regulations that are going to limit the scope of what you're able to capitalize on. You will never see these opportunities again. And you want to capitalize on a 3 to 5x, then for your sake, I hope that you are already rich, because that's the weakest shit that I've ever heard. Your kids deserve more. Your parents deserve more. If you are here now, you have no excuse but to make the most of this opportunity that you're presented with. I mean, Jesus, most folks haven't even entered the market yet, let alone built their positions to where they want them to start their wealth building journey. And you here now, already starting in setting your positions and going to continue building, hopefully, and you're not going to learn from the information at hand from cycles past and sell so prematurely that you are going to fail to capitalize. Don't confuse this with another influencer trying to get you to hold your bags so he can sell before you. My channel isn't going to have a fraction of the impact needed to move price. But I can sure as hell tell you I'm holding a darn side longer than that. I can tell you that it's also likely that I probably have a lot more skin in the game than most of you. And I don't say this to beat my chest. I say this to show you that I have faith, conviction in this ecosystem. So take that as you want, but I really do think there's a massive opportunity at hand. If you are not holding until bull market season, having accurately predicted when that is likely to be for the altcoin market, then you're selling yourself short. I hope this conveys my thoughts. As always, please do, if you want, if it's been any help at all, like and sub. If you want to join the private group, again, the link is below. Take a look at a lot of the macro indicators out there. take a look at all of the narratives, the tech developments, all of the stuff we mentioned on this channel coming to fruition and painting a very vivid picture of a very fruitful future. All you got to do is generally understand how cycles work, have enough patience and conviction to not get sidetracked by a lot of these meme coin premature pump messaging that seems to be going around right now, and hold until a better time. Watch channels like mine to get an idea of when the right time to get out of the market is likely to be. We'll be covering that. Trust me. Right now, we're still building our positions. We're a long way from that. So again, I hope it helped. I apologize if my frustration is coming out in this video, but some things just need to be said. And I hope to catch you guys on the next one.